So moving along, we have some little gaps just here. You could probably just see we've got these little gaps that have sort of formed, and that's just due to the two pieces of plastic coming together and there being a bit of a gap. How to get rid of them nice, quick and easy? Well, we can use a nice filler here. I'm using Vallejo plastic putty. It's a nice liquid putty. It's got this really cool applicator in which you know, you can really sort of get into these hard to reach places that are on here. We just give it a bit of a squeeze and inject that Vallejo plastic putty right where you see those little, they're almost like bubble gaps that we got going on in here. Right, just like that. Now you could leave it to dry and then sand it, but then you've got all this detail work that you're gonna have to put back in. So we get ourselves a nice cotton wool bud, make a little bit moist, and then what we do is we just wipe this up. Right, while it's still wet, we wipe it up, and because it's in a recess, we can't wipe it out the recess so easily, but we can sort of tidy it up. And what you'll end up with is you've wiped away most of it, but where that gap is, it's stayed. And there we go, those gaps are nicely now gone. We've not had to do any sort of sanding or anything like that. We've just filled it, wiped it away, and it's done. This stuff, you know, after maybe 10 minutes, you might see a bubble form, no problem. Reapply the stuff again. You might not like the finish of it. Again, you know, you can always come along and just add another application, or you could just keep rubbing at it with the cotton wool bud and completely remove it and start again. So it's a nice technique to use on that. So now we're going to move into the spray stage. We need to sort of prep our model ready for spraying. So what we're going to do, we're going to get out some Tamiya masking tape. You want to start off with the 10mm. Right, and what we're going to do, we're just going to get a nice tiny little bit just off it, and we're going to get these nice clear stands here nicely masked up, because we want to leave these, well, it's up to you really. I mean, it depends if you want to go for the nice clear ones, which mostly people do, or you could just spray them all black, and then we're just sort of going to guesstimate a length for the rest. Right, and we're just going to mask this onto here, starting with the edge, and then we can just roll it around like so. So that's all nicely protected. You'll notice also that I have just left maybe like a millimeter just at the top, so as we can actually sort of push that into our model like so. So now we could come to the spraying stage. So when it comes to spraying, you might not be used to an airbrush, might not have used an airbrush before. I do recommend you go to Genesis Models website and you go under the tutorial section and find basic airbrushing, which is a nice little guide to sort of introduce you to spraying with an airbrush. Now this model is pretty simple. I'm not really going to go mega sort of anything sort of fancy spraying here. We don't really need to. I mean, this is such a small scale, we don't have to. I mean, we could go off and do some fancy spraying, but I don't think you really sort of need to with this one. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get out some thinners. Now this thinners is also, again, go to Genesis Models website. There's a tutorial on how to make your own home-brewed thinners, and we want to throw this into our airbrush first, right? And we want about a 50-50 mix. Now I've got a bit too much in there. That should do. Now the colour I'm going to be using is just here. It's by Vallejo and it is their 71097 grey primer. I mean, it's not the exact colour they particularly used in that Hawk Wargames used, but it's a colour I've decided on, so you can sort of pick what you want. I mean, I know some people spray them completely different colours, right? And all we want to do is we want to pour this into our colour cup, right? And we want about a 50-50 mix, which getting a 50-50 mix, really it's sort of eyeballing it. It's around about the 50-50 mix. You sort of do get there with experience in time, and we just give this a nice good mix with a paintbrush while it's in the colour cup. You'll notice that I did put the thinners in first, because that's because there is a tiny little reservoir in the needle end just here, and you can't really mix that, so it's best to put the thinners in first so that comes out first. So we just want to check how our spray pattern is on a nice kitchen paper towel, nice and easy. And then what we're going to do is, when it comes to spraying, what you want to do is start off with a nice light misty coat, right? So we're not going to come along and just blast a load on, right? I mean, literally this is sort of coming in to the point where you can almost just hardly tell that much that you've got like any paint on there. That light misty coat just gets the paint starting to stick to the surface a lot easier than coming along and say go in, well, let's just blast a load of paint down and it looks all wet. That can create problems, maybe peeling, cracking, those kind of things. So you don't really want to be just blasting it down like so. Just nice, simple, really sort of light, almost hardly noticeable misty coat all over the model. So with our misty coat down, what we want to do now is we want to do a light coat. A light coat is where you just start to see the coverage come on. Now what you don't want is to start seeing the paint look wet when it goes down. If it looks wet when it starts to go down, you have put too much paint down. So just move along to another part of the model. Also, the PSI is around about just under maybe 20 PSI. Now these paints, they do dry rather quickly. Right, so we could probably put on you know, a coat every maybe 15 or 30 minutes, so you can sort of spray through this quite quickly, but we are getting some pretty good coverage. Now we do have to make sure we get in and around all of this, because there's lots of sort of nooks and crannies, so sort of try and get absolutely everywhere nice and equally, and then just keep on doing coats after coat after coat until you've got some good coverage. Now these paints, they are shall we say a little bit on the delicate side. You can sort of scratch them easy and everything, so you do want to be sort of careful handling it, but I'll show you where we can harden this and make it nice and durable. So now what we want to do, now we've got this all nicely sprayed, as you can see just there, what we want to do is we want to do some dry brushing. Dry brushing can be a nice, quick, easy effect to get your model sort of having some of those highlights on without actually having a steady hand and painting all the highlights in. Now there is a right way and a wrong way to apply a dry brush. With dry brushing, what you don't want to be doing is dipping into your paint. Right, you brush onto a kitchen paper towel to make your brush also, we say, nice and dry, which is why we call it a dry brush. But what some people may do, and they might do it by accident, is not quite get your brush so dry. You've still got too much wet paint on, and when you come along and sort of try and do a bit of a dry brush, you end up doing something like that, which is not what we're after here. We need to actually, you know, really sort of kind of get a paintbrush and make it like a dry brush, right? And then if I show you on another part, if we then start going off, and instead of you don't want to be coming in after you've sort of got your paintbrush ready and press down and paint onto your model as hard as you can. You want to start off nice and light, just to make sure, you know, that you haven't got too much paint on your brush. And then as you feel and see that, you know, not as much paint is actually coming onto the model, then you can start applying more pressure and more pressure as you sort of go along, and hopefully you'll then see that you end up just, you know, nicely touching those those raised bits of detail, and start bringing those bits out, bringing them to the foreground, and sort of bringing out that detail, and hopefully, as you can see there, it just gives it that little bit extra, sets it off a little bit nicer. But that's just one stage. You know, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be building this up to give us all sorts of highlights and shadows and all this kind of stuff. This is a nice, quick, easy, effective way of just bringing out them highlights.